we've completed our micro adjusting, our exposure and our colour balance. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little bit of digital retouching onto Liv. Now, how much you do this might depend on what your client wants or what you're looking for yourself aesthetically. But I'm just going to cover this quickly just to show you how quick it is just to remove blemishes and to smooth the skin a little bit, just from an aesthetic point of view, if that's what you're looking for. We're not going Hollywood, we're not going high end, we're not changing the face of a shape or anything. We're just going to clean it up so Liv looks exactly how she would look if you glance at her rather than stare at her. That's the point of this type of minimal retouch. So to do that, first thing we have to do is get rid of these adjustment layers, because we can't do any retouching on those per se. So although they're still there, we're going to hide them out of the way so they still affect the picture, but they're hidden so we can't see them and they're not getting our way anymore. There's two ways you can do that. You can either go to layer and click flatten image, or you can click Control and Shift and E on your keyboard, and you'll see it's flattened them into the background. So the effect of them is still there. We're just not having to work around them. So continuing our theme of non-destructive editing, we're going to not destruct this picture that we've made. We're going to use layers again, and we're going to make copies of this so we don't destroy it if we make any mistakes. So again, we're going to look at the background there. If you click Control and J on your keyboard, you'll see it's made a copy of that. Can you see that? You can also do it by dragging the image down into the plus sign there, and it will also copy the layer. So anything we do on this layer now, I'll just show you something brutalist, just so you can see. Oh dear, we didn't mean to do that. So we can either go brush tool into the bin from the history, right? Or we can go layer into the bin. We've still got our original picture. We've not lost anything. We haven't lost a day's work. It's still there. And we can just simply make another background copy and go again. All right? So that's why we're using non-destructive editing. So we never, ever lose our original. So the first thing I'm going to do on this picture of the little Liv is just check for anything that's kind of like a bit what we call in the way. So something that you might stare at or that you might be drawn to rather than looking at her beautiful face. And Liv's got great skin, very natural looking skin. There's no, we're not talking anything Botox here. We're not talking anything really bad skin here. It's just a little bit. And I do this because I always say that when you look at a person as a human, you don't stare at them. You don't notice all their minor flaws in their skin. But when you've got a photograph that's high definition, you do tend to notice them. So all I'll first to do on the copied layer is I'll always use one of the healing tools. For this one, I'm going to use the patch tool there, and you'll see why, because it's pretty simple. A little blemish like that, you can draw around it, drag it off to the side, and it's replaced it with a good patch of skin. And again, this has been very picky, but I'm just showing you how to do it just so you can see it. It's pretty simple. We might have got a bit of makeup in the way. I'm not going to take Liv's beauty spot off because it's nice, but if you wanted to, you could draw around it like so, drag it to a good piece, and bang, it's gone. But that's pretty much all I'm going to do with Liv. She's got great skin, great complexion. Sometimes you might paint yourself into a little bit of a corner and you have to go back a few times, but that's not too bad. Just stuff that the eye might be drawn to. You can use it to get rid of bits of stray hair as well if you wanted. If you didn't want a piece of hair, and then you go like that, get rid of it. Sometimes you end up with bits of hair that you didn't really want at all. So just doing that, just to make sure that's lovely and clean. You can go to town. There's a little bit of a wrinkle there, but I think that's quite natural for Liv. I'm not going to take that off. Like I said, we're not going Hollywood. And that's it. That's the kind of all the retouching I would do with a portrait generally. You just generally cleaning up things that the eye looks at that you wouldn't normally see naturally if you're looking and talking to somebody. That's the first stage. So the next stage now is we're going to just add a little bit of skin smoothing, just again to take away that high definition camera sees every wrinkle thing. We're just going to make Liv's general appearance look a bit more flattering because the camera and the lights have kind of destroyed some of her natural beauty. So again, we don't want to lose the work we've done here on this layer. We only did a little bit of work, but we don't want to lose it. So we're going to make a copy of that layer, again by Control and J on the keyboard or by dragging it onto the plus side. We now got a background. And we can even click in there. It says that we can click in there, retouch, like that. And then we can click in this one and say, call that skin blur, like that. So we know what each one is. And every time you build these up, they're like layers of an onion. So anything that's underneath is covered by the one at the top. Okay, so the top one here, we've got this edit, we've got the background edit, we've got the retouch edit, all merged together in that one layer. Okay, and on that skin blur layer, we're going to add loads of blur and then reduce it. And we do that so we can see exactly where we've been, what we've done, how it looks, why it looks, and we're not having to repeat it, because we put loads on in the first place and we can take that off. It saves us having to repeat the process. So we click on the skin blur layer, we go up to filters, we're going to go to blur, and then we're going to drop down to Gaussian blur, and it's going to bring up this little what would you call that? It's going to bring up this little box here, and you'll see it's predetermined radius. It will come like that. It will say that. I always go for 15 because I've learned the size of my JPEGs, the ridiculous amount I want to put on. 15 gives you a good place to start. And then I click OK, and you can see that it's loaded all that into that layer. So now layer has become completely blurred out. But what we're going to do is we're going to use that layer to just smooth the skin we want, and we're going to bring back in all the detail we want. Now, I know it's really, really too much there. It's lots to see. You can't really tell where you are, what you're doing. So to start with, I'm just going to reduce the opacity on that layer here. Can you see opacity? I'm going to reduce that down to 40%, just so I can better see where I'm going. Can you see that? Yeah? So we can now tell that we've got blur, but it's nothing like as much. So I'm now going to brush back in, or paint back in the bits I want to be totally detailed, not blurred at all. And to do that, we use something called a layer mask. And it's very easy with a layer mask to put on and brush. All we're going to do is we've clicked on the correct layer there. This little camera looking thing, this black thing with a circle. We click on that and you can see it's punched a white hole in it. What that allows us to do is using the paintbrush tool over here, brush tool, is to brush out or brush in things we want and we don't want. You see over here, we've got a colour palette, which is black and white. You can change that by pressing X on your keyboard. See that? Press X, it changes it. So when it's set to black, your brush will rub out. You see that? If I click X and change it to white, it will put it back. So you can use that process to go around the whole picture, brushing out, brushing back in, bits you want, don't want. Just pretty simply swapping around the brush from black to white, okay? Another important point on your brush is up here on the left-hand side at the top, you'll see brush size. If you click on that, you'll change your brush hardness, right? It needs to be completely soft. That's because if you have a hard brush and your brush, you'll see a hard line, okay? You don't want a hard line, you want a soft line, so you're nice and feathered across where you've gone, all right? It needs to be feathered so you don't have any hard edges, any lines. Another thing to take note of is you can change the opacity of your brush. So it can either take big chunks off like that, set it and do that, or if you change the opacity up here to, let's say, 50%, close enough, it won't take as much off. So you can feather your edit at this stage by how much or how little you want to brush on and brush off. So using all those tools allows us to quickly brush around Liv, to paint out the bits we don't want, to leave the bits we do want, to help us soften her skin a little bit, just as I said, to make her appearance more like it would be naturally, without the high definition camera staring at her, okay? So I'm going to do this fast, and I'm going to do it brutally. When you do it, you'll do it a little slower, in a bit more detail, you'll check the edges a bit more. But for this demonstration, I'm just going to do it very brutally, right? I've got 100% opacity, quite a big brush with soft edge, and I'm just going to brush back in all the bits that I know I don't want to be soft, okay? So the hair, background, jumper. Now let's say you need to take a break here, you go to the toilet, you make a cup of tea, you come back, you might think, oh God, I can't remember what I've done. With a brush, simple. If you hit the backstroke key, backslash key on your keyboard, it'll show you where you've been. And that's a great way, if you brush now, you can see that it's telling you where you've been and what you've done. And I find that as a great guide to help you not make any mistakes, not brush out bits that you didn't want to brush. Yeah. So I'm going to do the next bit in silence, stick a bit of music on, and I'll quickly edit Liv's lovely face. So you can see I did that very, very, very quickly. Didn't take too much care, like you would do if you're doing this properly. And if I turn off that, you can see. And if I zoom in, you can see now, if I switch that on and off, you can see that quite subtle. And now, if you decide that's still too much skin blur, you can feather it by changing the opacity there. And a quick way to do that is if you press V on your keyboard, that one there, that gives you that little pointer tool, you can now press V again, sorry, and you can click number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever you want. Let's say we want 30%. If I click 3, see it change? So you can use the opacity up here by selecting V on your keyboard and use the numbers 3 or 4 or 5 to give you a percentage. Let's go for 30. It was 40. I'll zoom in now and we can still see the effect, but it's quite subtle. It just takes a little edge off. And there we've got pretty much the retouch that I would do. Now, if I'm being really picky, I might just do some other hairs or some other bits. But generally speaking, that's it from a retouch point of view. You know, so we're talking again, start with the background layer. We go one retouch layer, which is spots, blemishes. We make a copy of that to make the skin blur layer. We apply a Gaussian blur at 15%. We then reduced it while we're editing down to 40 so we can see it a bit better. Final adjustment, 30% opacity after we brushed on and off all our bits we wanted. And Liv is now perfectly ready for the next stage, which is crop and sharpen and save. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please like, share and subscribe. And if you hit the bell, you'll be notified of every time I bring another tutorial or podcast. Cheers.